Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for my rational perspective on the Carabao Cup final. 0-0 over 120 minutes and 11-10 of course to Liverpool in the penalty shootout. I had to give my voice a little bit of time to recover, as you maybe can still hear, and sometimes to think about the game, because obviously it was a heartbreaking defeat. My feelings on it, it's weird how obviously football works. I was very harsh on Chelsea after their performance against Crystal Palace where we won, and I wasn't very happy with that game. We've lost this one, but I'm a lot more positive about the performance, and that's kind of, I know for some people it's always about the result, and even if you play crap and won, it doesn't really matter. But I think there are many factors that go into this. Why, personally, for me, it wasn't like the end of the world losing yesterday. And I think Chelsea, some poor finishing, which we'll get into. But I think the circumstances surrounding the game, things out of the players and Thomas Tuchel's control, really, given all of that surrounding the game heading into it, and we still got a performance of that level, I think is really encouraging. And there are things that should encourage Chelsea moving forward in terms of some players returning, the system, some players really stepping up at the right moment. That I hope they can continue that form moving forward for the rest of the season. And you know, it's not done. You know, two days later, or you know, Wednesday, we're going to be facing Luton Town in the FA Cup, a chance to get to the last day of that competition once again. And it's just kind of the way Chelsea rolls. You know, we're club World Cup champions. We won the Super Cup earlier this season. This would have been wonderful to beat Liverpool. It really would. Don't get me wrong. It was devastating to lose. But at the same time, you know, not only the fact is the season not done, but I think that you kind of have to just take this one on the chin and move forward, particularly when I think the performance was good. Let's get into the Kepa decision because, well, I say Kepa decision. To me, there's no debate in terms of if maybe there's some people in my comments who are going to disagree with what I'm about to say. I don't understand why there's any criticism of Tuchel for making the change before penalties. I think all of us pre-game, if I would have said we get to 117, 118 minutes, the game's 0-0 and we're about to go in a penalty shootout with one sub left, you're bringing on Kepa because it's a formula that worked against Villarreal earlier in the season. Kepa has saved a lot of penalties over his Chelsea career, some in shootouts, well, most of them in shootouts. This is a guy who's proven that in this kind of scenario, he seems to step up. As Tuchel speaks about, he speaks about the data a lot. The data and logic would have told you that Kepa is a better keeper in these situations than Edouard Mendy is. Edouard Mendy proving in open play or sort of in normal time why he's a wonderful keeper with some brilliant saves. I mean, the save from Mane in the first half was ridiculous. It really was. It was below me and it was just incredible stuff from Mendy. But for Kepa, it was the obvious decision. I don't know how Tuchel can be blamed. He's being, if anyone is calling it, I know some pundits have called it ridiculous. Unless you don't have an understanding of what Tuchel's done before, or it's just hindsight, it's mere hindsight because it went wrong. And ironically, the keeper you brought on to kind of win you the shootout, and there's always this kind of thing about keepers can't really lose in a shootout. Or they can, you know, when it goes that far, when we go all the way to the keepers having to take penalties, which really most of the time doesn't happen. But I'm seeing it more and more now. I think penalty shootouts are getting higher quality, which isn't good for fans' kind of stress levels that going on and on into sudden death, because I think it was a high quality shootout. I really do. I know people are so critical of keepers nowadays, but I think the level of finishing from both teams with all the outfield players was pretty good. I think, you know, Kepa, the closest he got to any of them was the Konate one, I think, which may have just been before the keepers had to take the penalties. But, you know, as I say, it's a formula that's worked before. You know, penalty shootouts by their nature sometimes feel like a little bit of a lottery. And stats tell you that when you take a penalty second in a shootout, you're less likely to win. And also the fact that it was taken at Liverpool's end of the pitch, which increased the pressure on Chelsea players, of course, a lot more than if it was taken at the other end. So that's what it is. Kepa skies the penalty. I don't think his season and his whole reputation should be defined by that. I think Kepa's done such good work to rediscover some confidence this season, and that's what it is. You know, we stopped Liverpool from scoring in 120 minutes. We got to the penalty shootout. On another day, you know, the luck may have been on our favour, and I think that's what sometimes there is drama, there is that mental side of it as well, that maybe we lost on the day. You know, I don't think we can go overboard with that once you get to a penalty shootout. the backdrop of obviously what had happened pre-game was so big. Not in terms of fundamentally legally something changing from Chelsea Football Club and who owns the club, but obviously it was going to have its impact on not only all of us reading about it, but I'm sure the players and Tuchel even admitted this pre-game, how it was having an impact. So to get that level of concentration and performance, I mean, you wouldn't have thought that anything had happened pre-game. It looked like a typical Tuchel performance in a big game, which, you've got to give credit. The wasted chances, I mean, the way I've kind of put the game in my head in terms of the wasted chances, and there were some, I mean, particularly two from Mason, the second one that hits the post. I mean, I could just, even though, of course, it was very recent, just seeing that from my seat, it dropping, and him getting the chance one-on-one, he has to score it. And it just kind of felt to me that game was a sign of pre-ROM. That game could have happened, say, in April, May of 2021 before we won the Champions League. I've seen a lot of stuff about Lukaku in terms of people trying to make out that he kind of has broken Chelsea's attack. Yesterday, you saw what Chelsea's attack was like pre-Lukaku. We're fluid. We create chances, but we are woeful at finishing. And that is why we came to the decision to sign Lukaku in the first place. And I think you saw that yesterday. This is the difficult balancing act Tuchel is trying to have this season, is keeping players in the attack who give him the pressing, give him the movement, give him the fluidity, seem to gel with what Tuchel wants to do in a game, especially against a team like Liverpool, where we maybe have a little bit more space to counter, versus having a ruthless edge when you get those opportunities. I guess the problem was that Kai, who had a good game and created about 4 chances, I think, in the game, I don't think any of them felt, in the game he barely got any looks at goal. The two he did both got ruled out for offside, unfortunately, and he both scored them. So again, fate, if the Chalobah ball to Mount falls to Kai, given his recent form, are we winning this game? And it's in the Champions League final, it did, and he put it in. So that's the shame of it. I think Kai had a good game, and I think Tuchel should stick with Kai, at least when we get to the Premier League game next weekend. But still, it's that balancing act, isn't it? That, I don't think you can pin all of Chelsea's problems on Lukaku. When he's not there, there are still players not taking their opportunities, and that has been a consistent theme, hasn't it? But I do want to speak about some brilliant performers on the day who I think absolutely deserve credit. I think sort of my top 3 or 4 performers on the day, Thiago Silva. I keep on speaking about this guy, but, give him a lifetime contract. It was incredible watching him, particularly when we got to extra time. You could quite clearly see players flagging, as they do, given how emotionally draining the game is and how intense it is between both sides. But he's still, at the age of 37, he's bringing that ball out. He's trying to switch plays, trying to make things happen. He's being proactive. He looks like he could play another 120 minutes. That's at least the way it looked like to me. Thiago is just a freak of nature, really. And, you have to remind yourself that this is a guy that we didn't pay 80 million for, but he very much, given, when you factor in what he's done for Chelsea's defence since we signed him, I mean, he might as well have cost that, because out of all the players you could buy on the market, the encyclopedia, like the knowledge he has of defending in terms of danger awareness, the way he's able to command a defence, the clearance from Mohamed Salah was brilliant. It really was, in terms of how far back he was. You go back and watch that clip again, he's near the halfway line and he gets back and clears it. He understands what is going on. He is a step ahead of everyone on that pitch at times, and truly wonderful. Mateo Kovacic, again, I think out of him and Kante, I think he had the better game. Kova, I think, is probably in line with Thiago and one other player, and maybe, all top. It's it probably says a lot that my top sort of performers, just to go through them: Thiago, Kova, Rudiger, Mendy. You could argue those are the top 4 contenders for player of the season so far, really. And I think it says a lot that those 4 players really played well yesterday. I mean, Kovacic is now becoming the player consistently that we've been crying out for so long. Defensively, I think he was sound yesterday, and also offensively, he was trying to make things happen. And I think he links well with players around him, and he just brings a lot of drive to the team, and that flair that you want from him as well. He really has streamlined his game under Tuchel, and it's masterful. It really is, and it's just good, because I think he, given the fact that Jorginho really hasn't started a lot of big games. I was having this conversation on Football London with Adam Newson today, of like, you think about Jorginho not starting the Club World Cup final, and not starting the League Cup final, and not starting the last 16 first leg against Lille. back end of last season, or I told you that in sort of October, November time, you would have laughed at me if I said Jorginho would play none of those games. Is it a sign that we're moving away from Jorginho? Is it a sort of forward planning thing from Tuchel because of what might happen this summer? We'll have to wait and see, but Kovacic is absolutely earning that spot at the moment. Rudiger too, in terms of Salah. And it wasn't just Rudiger, because he seems to have great games against Salah pretty consistently. But I also thought Marcos Alonso deserves a lot of praise. I think he had a good game. Sure, offensively, it's weird. It's like, once again, balancing. Sometimes, offensively, you wanted to be quicker on certain things to add that pace that we need from a wing back. But defensively, against a player like Salah and the form he's been this season, I think you've got to give credit to Marcos Alonso, who I criticise a lot. It's a massive game. He stepped up for it. I want to see that level of performance and focus again, because we need it, because we don't have Ben Chilwell back anytime soon. So hopefully this is a springboard for Alonso for the rest of the season, because if Tuchel wants to play as a wing backs, Alonso is obviously a better fit in that position than Malang Sarr. So I think he deserves credit. I thought Trevor Chalobah, who obviously came in very late for Christensen's Achilles injury, really good game from Trev, a massive game for him, probably his biggest game in a Chelsea shirt so far, and I think he dealt with it really well. And to be fair, his sort of involvement in that Keita challenge, Keita should have been sent off another moment that could have gone Chelsea's way and really swung the tie in our favour on the day. But to get up from that, keep on playing. I just thought defensively there were moments where he was tested, but I think he stood up to it well, and just proving, once again why he's been such a breath of fresh air this season. His breakthrough and his sort of a sense of getting so many minutes, when I think when he didn't go on loan in the summer, there was kind of feeling, well, how many appearances is he going to get? Now he's back fit. I mean, we may go back to that back three that we were seeing in sort of November time with Trevor, Thiago and Rudiger, which I think those three were forming into a really good trio at the back there. So I think that Tuchel may stick with that. And of course, it's great to have Reece James back. It really is so wonderful to see him back on the pitch. There were times maybe where I'd want him to cross the ball in a little bit more. I think he got into some good positions, but I can't be too harsh on him. He hasn't played football since December, or any matches since December. So he probably played a little bit more than I think Tuchel would have wanted. The fact that it went to extra time all the way. He probably played about 60 minutes in total, I think, in the end, when, if it would have ended in normal time, I think that would have been a good sort of starter for Reece. But we'll have to see how Tuchel manages him in the coming days. But he looked pretty fresh. I mean, I didn't see a player defensively who looked out of place. I don't think he stood out as one player that I was like, oh yeah, he looks really rusty. So real positive for Chelsea, because creatively he's obviously a massive player for us as well. Listen, it's tough. Wembley again. My personal 100% record of going to cup finals and seeing us win is over. That was something I didn't want to say to anyone before the game, but it's now over, unfortunately. Chelsea could be back there again. I mean, our record now at Wembley is pretty poor. I think it's 3 or 4 defeats in a row there. You got the 2 FA Cup finals, the League Cup final. I think I think it's 4 in a row. Someone said, I heard that. I think it is, isn't it? The League Cup 2019, the 2 FA Cup finals, and this one. So it's not been good, and Chelsea can only rectify that if they get to the FA Cup final for the 3rd time in a row, which obviously they have a good chance of doing this season. And we've got the Champions League, but it's also about getting back to the Premier League. And I do want to say that I think you look across the 3 games against Liverpool this season, they've been all close affairs. I think out of all 3, you could argue that 2 of them Chelsea should have probably won. The one in January, I think Chelsea played really well, but again, missed chances. And yesterday, I think Chelsea had really good chances to score, as did Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool had good chances and moments, especially with players like Salah, that I expected a lot more from. And, it was just one of those weird days. But, Liverpool have been in fine form recently. And the fact that Chelsea went up against them and kept a clean sheet, looked at that level. You hope that level of intensity from the performance, and the fact, even though we did lose on penalties, we can take that focus forward. We can use it as motivation. It's always horrible to lose a final. It is, especially to a rival like Liverpool. But at the same time, I think with some of the uncertainty going around the club, to see that level of performance, to see more positives and negatives on the day, I think that, what way would we have wanted it for it to go that far in penalties and lose, or get absolutely humbled on the day 3-0? I mean, I know it sounds like a pretty obvious answer, but at the end of the day, I think given this is not the last game of the season, there are things that Tuchel kind of has to take on board and has to move forward with. And really, the thing you can look at on the day is kind of looking at and going, oh, should I have kept on Edouard Mendy? But if he kept on Edouard Mendy and we lost the penalty shootout, people would have been saying, why didn't you bring on Kepa? I think that is a real non-sort of issue. I think the biggest problem on the day was finishing chances, which is such a consistent theme, isn't it? No matter who's up front. So we move on to Luton. Hopefully Chelsea can bounce back. There's a lot of players who weren't involved yesterday who I think will get a run out against Luton, and then we're back into the Premier League against Burnley. And you don't want to think, make the Premier League an afterthought really, because obviously it's still big for us to get top four. I think if Chelsea can win, put a run of 3 or 4 wins together now with some favourable fixtures, touch wood, I think that Chelsea will probably be in a very good place in terms of top four, given how teams below us continue to drop points and continue to falter. And we have now got, I think, 1 or 2 games in hand, Leicester and Arsenal, I think, that need to be rescheduled. So for once, we're the ones with a couple games in hand, and hopefully we can capitalise on that later in the season. But hopefully Chelsea can bounce back pretty soon. And we're still world champions. Just remember that. We're still world champions. They can't take that away from us, at least for a year. So enjoy that, and we'll be back again very soon with more videos. All the best.